how music is produced in 2025, I use an instrument such as the Falcon, and I have a variety of instruments I can choose to play with my keyboard. So right now I have a piano, and I can choose many different kinds of sounds. It doesn't have to be a keyboard. So if I choose to search for a bass, it'll find instruments that are comprised of a bass. So I can sample the sounds. So we have like a synthetic bass. It's a very advanced synthesizer. So I can use these timbre features to sort of dial in the kind of bass I'm looking for. And when I'm selecting one of these little square blocks, it's basically loading an entire module of sound. So right now I'm on Cameo, and it's found these two, but I can choose like Falcon, and so it's looking for the basses that are within Falcon. So let's say I choose the 303. Let's get a simpler bass. So that's me just playing the piano, and it's triggering the bass, and I would finesse the bass sound to sound more like I want for my project. And of course, that's a synthetic bass, but you can also have acoustic basses and things like that that sound more realistic, or electric basses. For instance, they have electric here. That's too harsh, but at any rate, you would sort of look through the various instruments for the kinds of things you're looking for. And another way you can actually do it is through this feature, where it shows you instruments and things like that. And so we can further distill things. And then they have this one here. So if I go to song banks and I choose something simple like the Fairlight, and so here we see the basses that they have within the Fairlight. I'm just using bass for this example, but of course we have bells and brass and pianos and keyboards and guitars and mallets. So this is an example of an acoustic bass. So I think there's also actually a soul bass in here, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, soul bass, which is the more traditional form of bass. This one has a slap. Takes a second to load here because I'm doing a lot of stuff at once. And we can see we can choose between pick and finger and different positions on the fretboard. So the first part of this is we pick the instrument we want. So in this case we're looking for a bass. It could be drums. So I could choose to load a light drum kit and choose between the various selections of the drum kit. So for instance, I've loaded this from Soul Drums, and I can go back into the main screen here and sort of mess with that actual preset as well. So this is the actual preset, and I can adjust it accordingly, but that gets a little more technical. So I just wanted to show, so what we do is we select the instrument we want to play, and then we would record it into a track like this. So just to give an example, I'll go ahead and do that. So I'll go over here and so that's me playing it into the what's called a DAW, which in this case it's Logic Audio, and then we see that it's represented here, so I can immediately play that back. And there's a lot of things that can be done with that. And so those are the notes that are rendered. And I double click this and it shows me the notes. But you can do many things with the notes. You can also quantize it, which means making it tighter. And one more additional layer is that we can add many, many effects. So that's when we start talking about production, which goes very deep. But at any rate, there's a lot of ways to mess with the sound. So what we would do is we would choose the one sound that we're wanting to create for the production and then put it on a track. And then we would go and we would create another track for another sound. So in Logic, you can do that very easily by using this. And it's created another track. So I would close this, open up Falcon, and then I would choose a different instrument. So I can choose any of these instruments, load them up, and we're on another track. And there happen to be a lot of ARPs with Falcon. And you can use an ARP or you can use something that doesn't have all that automated sound already. So let's go to something simpler like just a basic keyboard. So then I would say, well, let me go ahead and record the keyboard. And once again, the notes are rendered and we can see it here. Now there's also a way to record audio. So this is called MIDI and this is called notation, but you can also record audio. And you can look at it like this, or you can look at it at what's called the piano roll. So we have the piano representation for the piano roll, and then we have the score representation for like a manuscript or a score for a film. So that's how things can start. And normally if you're going to make like a song, you have some ideas, or you've written a piano piece or some kind of guitar piece to represent the song, or maybe you have some lyrical ideas. And so you would do what's called sketches like this kind of stuff. And you would end up with maybe like 100 tracks, so that you wouldn't have just like 2 tracks or 3 tracks. You'd end up with quite a few tracks, like maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, or even 100. And that's how you get a better and better quality of production, but then you have to kind of clean it all up and optimize it. Anyway, that's the gist of what's going on with how music is created. And we can do things like name these tracks. So I could say synth, and then I could say drums, and that's how we keep order of things. So we would end up with like 20 of these tracks, and part of them would be drums, and part of them would be synths, and part of them would be strings, etc., etc.